Greetings everybody, 'tis I, 480 Volts, and welcome to another episode of 480 Reviews. Today we are going to be talking about Mega Man X2, which is obviously the second game of the Mega Man X series. Let's just jump right into it.
Mega Man X2 was released for the Super Nintendo in Japan in 1994 and North America and Europe in 1995. The only thing worth noting here is that Keiji Inafune was less involved with the art style and focused more on planning, production, and story writing for future entries. The story takes place some few months after the events of the first game. Mega Man X leads the Maverick Hunters in an attack against the remnants of Sigma's army who, despite the destruction of their leader, are still at large. 8 Mavericks are identified and X sets out after them. However, during these missions, the Maverick Hunters receive a message from 3 Mavericks, Serges, Agile, and Violin, who together form an elite group known as the X Hunters. The X Hunters inform X that they have recovered the damaged parts of Zero, the Reploid who sacrificed himself in the previous game, and dare X to come and retrieve them. Dr. Kane informs X that he possesses Zero's memory chip and that if he had the rest of Zero's parts, he might be able to repair and reactivate the Reploid. You, the player, now have a choice. Continue through the stages as normal and pretend you never heard of these guys, or go out of your way to retrieve the parts of Zero. I'll explain in a little bit more detail how to do that later. Either way, once you have completed the 8 Maverick stages, you may enter the final area, the Fortress of the X Hunters. Each of the first 3 stages ends with a boss fight against one of the X Hunters, while stage 4 requires X to defeat all of the 8 Mavericks a second time. Once this is done, X receives a message from Sigma, who has apparently been rebuilt, presumably by the X Hunters, who were hoping to present him with X's cranial unit on a platter. X enters the final stage and encounters Sigma. At this point, events play out a little differently depending on what you, the player, have decided to do during the main Maverick stages. If you collected all of Zero's parts, a false robot made to resemble Zero is seen with Sigma. Sigma commands the robot to destroy X, but before it can attempt to do so, it is destroyed by the real Zero, whom Dr. Kane has successfully rebuilt. Sigma tells Zero that he knows much about him and escapes. If you did not collect Zero's parts, or at least not all of them, the robot seen with Sigma here is the real Zero, whom Sigma has rebuilt. Sigma will escape while X faces off against Zero. Once Zero is defeated, his memory chip reactivates and he recognizes his old friend X and apologizes for attacking him. Either way, the two split up. Zero attempts to destroy Sigma's computer systems while X goes after Sigma himself. Upon being defeated, Sigma wonders why Zero did not destroy X. He mentions that Zero was, quote, the last of the Doctor's creations, unquote, thus raising an unanswered question concerning Zero's origins and creator. X escapes the fortress as it crumbles to ruin and stands with Zero and reflects the events that have taken place. As before, X wonders just how long the fighting will continue, however this time, he reflects that the price for freedom is often high, and wonders just what or who he will be required to sacrifice to achieve said freedom, and if he will have the strength and will to do so, thus foreshadowing a dark yet epic climax in the upcoming entries of the X series. Apparently, Inafune made the decision to bring Zero back to life because he thought it would be a shame to keep him dead. It's no surprise that Inafune felt somewhat of an attachment to Zero, considering he designed the character himself with the intention of him being the main protagonist of the series, and only created X because Capcom felt it would be safer to go with a more familiar looking protagonist for the series. And even though I think the decision to bring back Zero was a wise one and was quite well executed, this time, it was unfortunately a bad sign of things to come. Regardless, the story, while not anything amazingly spectacular, is pretty good. Now for the gameplay. What do I always say, class? If you've played a Mega Man game before, even if it's an X game, you know what to expect. Like X1, this game begins with an intro stage, then it's off to the select screen with the 8 Mavericks. As always, you can do them in any order you prefer, and X will copy their weapon data onto his own programming to be used as potential weaknesses for other bosses. The biggest innovation here is the inclusion of the X Hunters and Zero's parts. After you have completed 2 Maverick stages of your choice, the X Hunters will contact the Maverick Hunters base and inform you that they have Zero's parts. Now, when you return to the stage select screen, you will see 3 of the remaining Maverick stages marked with one of the X Hunters. In each Maverick stage, there is a pathway that leads to a hidden battle chamber. In most cases, this chamber is locked, however, if you have selected one of the stages marked by the X Hunters, this chamber will open and you will face one of the Hunters in battle. Defeat the Hunter and you will be rewarded with one of Zero's parts. Then you can leave the chamber and continue on with the rest of the stage. Defeat all 3 of the Hunters, and you will receive all of Zero's parts. It should be noted that every time you beat a stage, the Hunters will move to different locations whether you fought them or not. For this reason, if you're trying to get all of Zero's parts, you may have to deviate from weakness order. It should also be noted that once you beat a Maverick stage, the X Hunters will never go there again. So if you haven't fought these guys by the time you beat all 8 stages, you ain't getting the Zero parts. X controls just like he did in X1, meaning he can run, jump, shoot, charge up his X-Buster to fire more powerful shots, and wall jump. Interestingly enough, the dash upgrade acquired in the first game is present from the start, as it will be in every X game to follow. Just like X1, there are 8 heart tanks, one in each Maverick stage, and acquiring them permanently lengthens your health bar. There are also 4 sub-tanks that can be filled with health to be used at a later time. And we've also got some more Dr. Light upgrades. I'm unsure as to why X no longer possesses the upgrades he received in the first X title except for the dash, which he has managed to hold on for every subsequent title, but then again, why did he and classic Mega Man lose their special weapons with each new title? I also think it's kind of odd that Dr. Light went to the trouble of creating countless amounts of upgrades for X, but scattered them all over the world in such a way that X only ever finds 4 at a time in a single game, or at least in the early games. The idea was okay in X1, but it becomes less and less believable with each passing title. I think it would have made more sense from a story point of view if Dr. Light had simply created and sealed a robot copy of himself designed to be activated at whatever point X should be, with the sole purpose of designing new upgrades for X during each new adventure. Anyway, 2 of the upgrades are almost identical to some of the upgrades you got in X1, with the armor upgrade providing you with better defense, and the blaster upgrade which allows you to charge your X-Buster further than normal, this time allowing you to shoot 2 powerful shots, as well as charge up your special Maverick weapons. Then you've got the helmet upgrade which allows you to detect secret passages in the terrain, which is not nearly as useful as it sounds. And the leg upgrade allows you to dash in midair, which is actually quite abusive. As was the case in X1, many of these extra items will require different weapons or upgrades to reach. Once all 8 Maverick stages have been beaten, you may progress to the X-Hunter stages. Just like X1 and Mega Man 7, you get breaks between each stage with your weapons refilled, and you can even use passwords to pick up where you left off. The bosses for the first 3 X stages are the X-Hunters themselves, Serge's Agile and Violin, although the fights are a little bit different than the optional battles in the main stages. Also, Hunter Stage 3 contains a secret light capsule that only appears if you have collected all hearts, sub-tanks, and light upgrades, and will not appear if you are not at full health. This capsule gives you the ability to perform the Shoryuken from Street Fighter, which can only be used while at full health and will severely damage, if not insta-kill, most enemies, including bosses. Stage 4 contains the teleport room with the 8 Mavericks. It's handled just like the classic games from 2 onward, except that the Mavericks don't drop health packs when they die. Instead, there are 4 little health packs in the main teleporter room that replenish every time you defeat one of the Mavericks. It's not ideal, but it gets the job done. Stage 5 contains the fight with Zero if you have neglected to collect the Zero parts, as well as the final battles with Sigma. Honestly, I suggest not getting the Zero parts. The Zero battle is actually pretty fun and exciting. The battle with Sigma is split into 2 parts. Part 1 is actually pretty tricky to me, while Part 2 is much easier. Just make sure you've saved your sub-tanks, as you'll most likely need them. And no, Sigma's first phase does not, in no way, never not look nothing like Wolverine. Mega X-Men. The graphics are basically the same as the first X game, which were already pretty good. The backgrounds for Bubble Crab stage look pretty sweet. The music was mainly composed by Yuki Awai, though a few other composers were brought in, including Ippo Yamada. The music is kinda hit and miss for me. Some tracks like Flame Stag and Magma Centipede are pretty driving and hard rock, while other tracks are just kinda bland. The production definitely sounds a bit better than X1, but the composition is lukewarm at best. Definitely my least favorite soundtrack of the X series so far. This game is kinda bland for me. Don't get me wrong, it's a solidly constructed game and it pretty much follows the formula set by X1, but for whatever reason, nothing really stands out to me except for the fact that Zero is alive at the end. And maybe that's the problem. It's too similar to X1. Am I saying X1 is a bad game? Absolutely not. But there is a difference between having a game mimicking the nuances of its predecessor and actually building upon said nuances. For most Mega Man games, the general consensus, whether it be an actual complaint or just a casual passing remark, is, it's just another Mega Man game. In the same way, this is just another X game. Maybe I'm being spoiled because I know what the rest of the series holds, but for me, this is my least favorite X game that I have completed.
Well, that was Mega Man X2, everybody. I suppose it's not a bad game, but just for me, it's just not all that great. It's nothing new, it's nothing fresh, it's nothing exciting, but there you go. We still got some more X games to look at, so be excited for that. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, do all the stuff that you're supposed to do when you enjoy videos. I don't know what all that is, and I'll see you next time. Pieces.